Humanity deploys 700,000 warships after a colony's annihilation. The emergency broadcast screamed across every channel. This is Outpost Vega. We are under attack. The Zalthari fleet, oh God, they're exterminating civilians. Any vessel, any military response, please. We can't. Static. Then a single, chilling transmission. Vega has fallen. Admiral Elias Rains stood motionless on the bridge of the HSS. Retribution, fists clenched as the hollow display flickered. 1 billion lives. Gone. Not a war. Not even a battle. A slaughter. The Zalthari hadn't sent demands. No warning. Just glassed Vega Prime from orbit, erasing an entire human colony in hours. The command deck was deathly silent. Officers stared at their screens, refusing to breathe. No one had ever hit humanity this hard. Then Rains exhaled. And his voice cut through the stillness like a blade. Bring up the casualty report. Show me the names. Sir, there are too many. I don't care. Show me. A cascading list of names appeared in the air before him. 1,072,819. A lifetime of faces, families, dreams, gone. And then, at the bottom of the list, 2 names hit him like a physical blow. Sarah Rains. Noah Rains. His sister. His nephew. The weight in his chest turned to something else. Something dark. Something merciless. Rains turned to his comms officer. Contact High Command. Inform them humanity is no longer at war with the Zalthari. The officer swallowed. Sir? Rains' voice was iron. We are at extermination. The call to arms. The declaration spread through the Terran fleet like wildfire. Vega has fallen. Vega has fallen. No debates. No hesitation. Every admiral, every captain, every soldier already knew. This wasn't about borders, resources, or diplomacy. This was survival. Humanity had faced war before, but never genocide. And the response was immediate, unified, terrifying. Across the Sol system, shipyards blazed with activity. Every warship, every dreadnought, every battleship was mobilized. Factories switched overnight, constructing missile batteries instead of consumer goods. Civilian engineers took up arms. Retired veterans returned without being asked. In days, the Terran Armada was at full strength. In a week, it tripled. And then a message was sent to every Zalthari world, every system, every military outpost. You have made an enemy of humanity. You are beyond forgiveness. You will not be negotiated with. You will not be spared. Your extinction begins now. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't bluster. It was fact. A galaxy shaken. The wider galaxy shuddered. Humanity had been a rising power, a formidable species, but not an empire. Not an ancient war machine. But now they were something else. Spies, diplomats, and military analysts across the Galactic Council watched in horror as the numbers poured in. Not 1 fleet. Not 2. 700,000 warships. No species in galactic history had ever mustered such force. Not the Dominion of Varkal, not the Viari Imperium. And then they saw the ships themselves. Dreadnoughts the size of cities. Battleships bristling with weaponry. Planet crackers designed for one purpose. Annihilation. Panic spread. Some species distanced themselves from the Zalthari, begging humanity for peace. Others tried to mediate, to reason, to survive what was coming. None of it mattered. Because humanity wasn't listening. The first strike. The Zalthari fleet that had burned Vega Prime still lingered in orbit, basking in their victory. To them, humanity was already defeated. Then the first human fleet arrived. Not just a skirmish force. Not a scouting party. 100,000 warships. They emerged from FTL like a tidal wave of fire and steel. Admiral Rains stood at the command deck of the Retribution, watching as the enemy's arrogance turned to terror. No quarter, he said. Engage. And hell followed. The first salvos annihilated the outer Zalthari warships before they even understood what was happening. Beams of searing light lanced through shields, melting hulls like wax. Railguns the size of skyscrapers punched through entire capital ships in a single shot. The Zalthari scrambled to respond, but it was too late. Humanity's wrath had arrived. Fighter squadrons weaved between burning wreckage, cutting down retreating ships with ruthless precision. Dreadnoughts ignored enemy fire as if it were nothing, returning devastation with cold, calculated fury. And then the orbital bombardment began. The human fleet did not hesitate. They did not warn. They did not stop. When the last Zalthari ship was nothing but drifting debris, the ground assault began. Drop pods rained from the skies like meteors. Human shock troops landed in the burning ruins of the Zalthari colony, moving with terrifying coordination. Entire city blocks were leveled within minutes. No mercy. No prisoners. The first Zalthari world fell in less than a day. And then the transmission came. One down. More to go. The universe holds its breath. The Galactic Council convened in an emergency session. Every species, every government, every power block in the galaxy had one question. How far would humanity go? Would they stop at vengeance? Would they halt after their justice was satisfied? Or had they become something worse? As the Terran Armada advanced into the next system, burning the Zalthari military outposts to the ground, the answer became terrifyingly clear. Humanity was not stopping. They weren't seeking retribution. They were ensuring this never happened again. To anyone. And if the galaxy stood in their way, then the galaxy would burn too. The ashes of the first Zalthari world still drifted through space when the Terran Armada surged forward, unstoppable, relentless, merciless. The next target was Karine Prime, a military stronghold that had stood for 2,000 years. Its fortifications had withstood pirate sieges, Dominion invasions, and even internal Zalthari civil wars. It lasted 4 hours against humanity. Rain stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching as a burning Zalthari destroyer spiraled toward the surface, screaming through the atmosphere like a meteor of vengeance. "Sir, Karine Prime's defense network is collapsing," Commander Wells reported. "They're scrambling for a counteroffensive." Rains didn't blink. They won't get one. Across the battlefield, human warships carved through the remnants of Zalthari forces. The enemy still outnumbered them, but it didn't matter. Humanity fought differently. Where the Zalthari relied on rigid tactics and centuries-old formations, human captains adapted in real time. They anticipated, outmaneuvered, outthought their enemy. A Zalthari battlecruiser prepared to launch an energy lance, only for 3 human corvettes to punch through their exposed flank before the order was even given. A Zalthari dreadnought tried to withdraw. It never made it. Thousands of torpedoes struck it in sequence, each one exploiting microfractures caused by the last. The dreadnought didn't just explode. It detonated like a dying star. The Zalthari ground forces panicked. Their planetary shields had been torn apart. The mighty Karine Line, an unbreachable fortress designed to repel entire armadas, now lay in ruins. The Zalthari weren't just losing. They were being hunted. The fall of Karine Prime. On the surface, Zalthari High General Kvar watched the sky burn. This isn't possible. Humans were a young species, barely 500 years into spaceflight. And yet, their ships cut through Zalthari warfleets as if they were paper. Their infantry overwhelmed entire battalions. "Sir, we must evacuate the command center." No, Kvar's voice was hoarse. He stared at the battlefield through narrowed, trembling eyes. "We hold." The Zalthari had always been the stronger species. They had ruled the mid-rim for over a millennium. They had crushed rebellious colonies, burned rivals, eradicated countless civilizations. But now the Zalthari were prey. A thunderous explosion shattered the fortress walls. Then out of the dust they came. Terran shock troops. Their armor was sleek, efficient, battle-scarred. Their movements were calculated, not like mindless berserkers, but like wolves who had already chosen their kill. In their eyes, Kvar had never seen such fury in another species. No hesitation. No hesitation at all. A Zalthari officer broke rank and ran. He was shot in the back before he made it 2 steps. The human in command, a woman with the insignia of a Terran major, advanced toward Kvar's command platform. She held up a hollow projector. A message played. "This is Admiral Elias Rains of the Terran Armada." Kvar's hearts clenched. That name. The human commander who had orchestrated this destruction. "The only reason you are still alive is because I need a messenger. You will deliver this to your war council." The screen flickered. Coordinates appeared. Kvar's blood ran cold. Those weren't human worlds. Those were Zalthari core systems. The humans weren't just retaliating. They were going for the homeworld. The major stepped forward and removed her helmet. Her face was lined with scars, her expression cold. "Run." Kvar hesitated for only a second. Then he turned and fled. The galaxy's breaking point. The wider galaxy descended into chaos. The Zalthari sent frantic messages to the Galactic Council, demanding intervention. But there was none. No one would save them. The other species watched in horror. Many had once feared the Zalthari. They had been ruthless conquerors, tyrants who had shaped galactic history through blood and war. And now they were the ones being exterminated. The Galactic Council convened in an emergency session, and for the first time in history no one spoke. No speeches. No arguments. Because no one knew what to do. The humans weren't making demands. They weren't interested in negotiations. They weren't stopping. And the question that loomed over every species, every world, was terrifying. If humanity could do this to the Zalthari, who was next? The Zalthari desperation. In a last, desperate move, the Zalthari summoned their last great fleet. The Doomfang Armada. 10,000 warships. The pride of their empire. A force so powerful, it had once broken a coalition of 5 starfaring species. The Zalthari believed it was enough. It wasn't. The Terran Armada outnumbered them 70-1. And humanity had already decided how this would end. The battle was brutal, short, and one-sided. The Doomfang Armada was erased from existence. Not a single Zalthari ship escaped. Their last, greatest hope died in the void. And then, the final message came. The transmission that sent a deathly silence across the universe. A simple statement. We are coming. The Terran Armada was on its way to the Zalthari homeworld. To end them. Forever. The moment of no return. Deep in the Zalthari home system, Emperor Virek stood in his war chamber, trembling. The humans are coming. All attempts to negotiate had failed. The Terrans hadn't responded. Because they weren't listening. His advisors spoke in panicked voices. Some screamed for surrender. Others shouted for a last stand. But Virek? He knew. This wasn't a war. This wasn't a conquest. This was vengeance. And nothing could stop it. Final transmission. The last Zalthari message to the galaxy was short. A single question. A desperate plea. Is there no mercy in humanity? The response came minutes later. There was. You burned it with Vega Prime. The Zalthari home system had been a beacon of imperial power for millennia. Now it was a death trap. As the Terran Armada surged into the system, the Zalthari defenses scrambled to form a final, desperate line. It was a wall of firepower, the greatest fleet the Empire had ever assembled. Battlecruisers, dreadnoughts, planetary defense stations. Every weapon in their arsenal. It would not be enough. Humanity wasn't here to fight a war. Humanity was here to end one. The final battle begins. Admiral Elias Rains stood on the bridge of the Retribution, staring at the holographic map. Red indicators flashed, Zalthari ships deploying in formation. They were abandoning traditional battle lines, throwing everything they had into one last stand. He didn't blame them. They knew. Everyone knew. This was their extinction event. A silence settled over the bridge. The moment before the storm. Then Rains spoke. All fleets advance. The order echoed through space. 700,000 human warships surged forward. Zalthari artillery opened fire, launching energy lances and fusion torpedoes. The void lit up with chaos, a brilliant, blinding hurricane of destruction. Terran shields flickered. Some ships buckled. Some were lost. But humanity did not stop. They never stopped. In retaliation, Terran warships unleashed their wrath. Railguns fired at near-light speeds. Thousands of kinetic slugs ripped through Zalthari hulls like paper. Hunter-killer drones swarmed, weaving between enemy vessels, bypassing shields, rupturing cores from the inside. Missiles struck in coordinated waves, detonations carving firestorms across the enemy fleet. For every Terran warship lost, 10 Zalthari burned. The breaking point. The Zalthari defense lines shattered. Their greatest dreadnoughts were torn apart. Their battlecruisers were left adrift, burning wrecks in the void. Still they fought. Not out of strategy. Not out of hope. But because they had nowhere left to run. Zalthari ground forces readied for the inevitable planetary invasion. They dug into bunkers, praying for a miracle that would never come. Because humanity had not forgotten Vega Prime. And they had not forgiven. Emperor Virek's last stand. Deep beneath the surface of Zaltor, the Zalthari homeworld, Emperor Virek watched in horror as his empire died. On the war room monitors, his fleet was gone. Planetary defense stations silenced. His cities, once gleaming marvels of civilization, were burning. He turned to his generals. We have one option left. A shudder of realization passed through the chamber. The Scorched Earth Protocol. Every Zalthari world would be glassed. Every city, every civilian, sacrificed to deny humanity their victory. A final act of defiance. But as Virek prepared to give the order, the screens flickered. A transmission. Not from his own fleet. Not from his own people. From the Terran Armada. The image sharpened, and Admiral Elias Rains appeared. His voice was calm, controlled, and utterly merciless. Emperor Vierek, you are out of time. Vierek's claws dug into his throne. You want surrender? He spat. Rains' expression did not change. No. Pause. We want justice. And then the bombardment began. The end of Zaltor. The sky turned to fire. Orbital railguns. Fusion lances. Hydrogen burst warheads. The surface of Zaltor cracked open. Cities crumbled. Oceans boiled. The Zalthari fought. They sent every fighter, every war machine, every desperate plea to the heavens. None of it mattered. Terran dropships descended through the storm of destruction. The ground invasion had begun. The animal that survives. The streets of Zaltor were ruins. Terran soldiers advanced. Not with reckless fury but with cold, methodical precision. This was not a massacre. This was an execution. Major Evelyn Carter led the charge, her battalion securing the capital district. She moved through the wreckage, stepping over the bodies of dead Zalthari warriors. She reached the Imperial Citadel, where Emperor Vierek had made his last stand. His body lay at the base of his throne. Gunfire had torn through his chest. The mighty Zalthari ruler, who had once commanded an empire spanning hundreds of worlds, lay dead in the dust. A fitting end. Carter removed her helmet. Sector secured, Admiral. Rains' voice came through the comms. It's done. A silence settled. For the first time since Vega Prime burned, the war was over. But humanity had already learned the most brutal truth of the universe. War never truly ends. The final decision. Back on the Retribution, Rains stood alone, staring at the ruined planet below. The Zalthari were finished. Their empire gone. Only one question remained. What came next? A voice behind him. Commander Wells. Sir. The Council is demanding a decision. Rains closed his eyes. He knew what they wanted. They wanted annihilation. The complete eradication of the Zalthari species. No survivors. No future. Only extinction. His hands clenched. They deserve it. Every man, woman, and child on Vega Prime had screamed as they burned. And yet, a thought lingered. A memory. Of his own wife. His own daughter. Burned alive. Would this bring them back? Would this end the nightmares? A long breath. His voice was steel. Prepare the final strike. Wells hesitated. Sir, if we do this, if we wipe them out completely, what does that make us? Rains looked out at the burning world. And for the first time he did not have an answer. The last transmission. The Galactic Council received a final message from the Terran Armada. No threats. No warnings. Only 4 words. It is finished. The Zalthari Empire was no more. But the galaxy had changed. Because now everyone feared humanity. And in the cold void of space, as the embers of war drifted into nothingness, one question remained. Had humanity won? Or had they become the very monsters they had sworn to destroy? The embers of Zaltor still glowed in the dark void of space. A world reduced to ruin. The Zalthari Empire, a civilization that had ruled over 1,000 species, was gone. The silence that followed should have felt like victory. It did not. The weight of extinction. Admiral Elias Rains stood on the bridge of the Retribution, staring at the smoldering remains of the Zalthari homeworld. Billions had died in the orbital bombardment. Not just warriors but civilians. Not just the guilty, but the innocent. And now the final decision loomed. The Terran High Command had sent their orders. Total extermination. Every Zalthari colony, every last survivor, was to be wiped out. No remnants. No refugees. The galaxy was watching. Would humanity become the very monsters they had sworn to destroy? Rains exhaled. His fingers trembled slightly as he reached for the console. This moment would define history. And he was the one who had to make the call. The hunt for the last survivors. The fleet had already located the last Zalthari remnants, a scattered collection of civilian ships trying to flee beyond the galactic rim. Weak. Helpless. They had no weapons. No defenses. Just a desperate need to live. The order was simple. Destroy them. Major Evelyn Carter stood in the war room alongside Rains, watching the tactical displays. She had led the charge on Zaltor. She had pulled the trigger herself when Emperor Vierek fell. She had no regrets. But this was different. She clenched her fists. Sir, we already won. Rains didn't respond. Outside, in the void, Terran warships moved into position, surrounding the last refugee fleet. A silence stretched across the bridge. The comms officer turned. "Awaiting your command, sir." Rains closed his eyes. Then he made his decision. The order that shook the galaxy. "Stand down." The bridge fell into absolute silence. The comms officer blinked. "Sir?" Rains straightened. His voice was calm, but there was no hesitation in it. "Do not fire. The war is over." Pause. Then the murmurs began. Confusion. Sir. Commander Wells stepped forward, voice measured. "High Command ordered." "Damn High Command." The room froze. Rains turned, eyes burning. "We are not executioners." His voice was iron. "Not today." The message was sent. The human fleet disengaged. The last Zalthari ships, the remnants of a fallen empire, fled into the void. For the first time since Vega Prime burned, the cycle of annihilation was broken. The consequences of mercy. The response from High Command was immediate. Rains was summoned back to Earth for a tribunal. His decision had defied direct orders. Some called it treason. The media exploded. The galaxy itself was divided. Some hailed him as a hero, the man who proved humanity still had a soul. Others called him a coward, the man who let the last remnants of the enemy escape. The hearing lasted 6 hours. When the verdict was read, Rains sat motionless. Effective immediately, Admiral Elias Rains is relieved of command. A silence. His career, his life's work, gone. But he didn't regret it, because the war was truly over. The price of humanity's wrath. The galaxy would never forget what humanity had done. Worlds lay in ruin. Empires had fallen. The name Terran was now spoken with fear. Trade partners withdrew. Diplomatic relations fractured. And in the shadows, whispers began. Other species saw what happened to the Zalthari. They saw what humanity was willing to do. And they began to prepare. Not for peace, but for the day humanity might turn its wrath on them. For the first time, the galaxy feared extinction. A new era begins. Years passed. Rains disappeared from the public eye, retreating to a quiet home on a distant Terran colony. The war became legend. But history never stops moving. One evening, as he sat on his porch watching the twin suns set over the hills, he heard footsteps. Evelyn Carter stood at the edge of the railing. She looked different. Older. Ardent. But her eyes still carried the same fire. She placed a data pad on the table in front of him. "You need to see this." Rains frowned, picking it up. He read. Then his breath stopped. The last Zalthari message. A transmission. A simple message sent from deep in uncharted space. "We remember. We survived." Rains exhaled slowly. The galaxy thought the Zalthari were extinct. That their empire was nothing but ashes. But something had survived in the dark. Something was waiting. He looked at Carter. "How many?" She shook her head. "We don't know." A long silence. Then Rains smiled. Because for the first time in years, he felt something other than regret. He felt anticipation. Because humanity had left them alive. And now they would see what the Zalthari had become. The final truth. The war had ended. But war never truly ends. Not in a universe filled with predators. Not when humanity had proven itself the most terrifying of them all. End of story.